A spoiled millionaire mocked his housemaid's dreams, until she showed up as the owner of the mansion. The grand chandelier in Leonard's mansion sparkled like a cascade of diamonds, but its beauty was wasted on him. He reclined lazily in a velvet armchair, swirling a glass of red wine as if it were the only thing worth his attention. Outside, the garden fountain trickled softly, but inside, the only sound was the steady swish of Clara's feather duster along the banister. Leonard tilted his head, eyeing her with an expression that was half boredom, half amusement. "Clara," he drawled, his voice echoing across the marble hall, "don't you ever get tired of cleaning? Day after day, polishing floors that aren't yours, dusting staircases you'll never climb as an owner." Clara paused, her hands tightening briefly on the duster. She turned slightly, her face calm and unreadable. "It's honest work, sir. Not everyone needs to own a mansion to feel proud of what they do." Her composure only fueled Leonard's arrogance. He smirked, lifting his glass in mock salute. "Oh, come now. Don't tell me you've never imagined it. You, walking around here as the lady of the house. Ordering servants instead of being one. Ha, the thought itself is absurd." His laughter bounced against the high ceilings. It wasn't kind laughter, it was the sharp, cutting kind meant to belittle. Clara didn't flinch. She set the duster aside and looked him straight in the eyes, her voice low but steady. "Dreams don't cost money, Mr. Leonard. Everyone has the right to dream." Leonard leaned forward, curiosity mixing with cruelty. "And what's your dream then, Clara?" "To own this place." He gestured dramatically at the mansion's tall windows, the ornate paintings, the grand staircase she had just polished. "Tell me, do you dream of being rich like me?" There was a long pause. Clara's lips curved in the faintest smile, but her eyes glimmered with something Leonard didn't recognize, quiet determination. "Dreams aren't about being like someone else, sir. They're about becoming who you're meant to be." For a second, Leonard blinked, caught off guard by the weight of her words. But pride quickly masked the moment, and he erupted in laughter again, spilling a few drops of wine on the Persian rug. "Oh, that's rich. My maid, the philosopher. Maybe one day you'll buy a castle and invite me in for tea, Clara didn't answer. She picked up her duster, turned back to her work, and spoke only one sentence, softly, almost like a whisper. "Life has a way of surprising those who laugh too soon." Leonard waved her off, uninterested, his laughter fading into silence. But those words lingered in the air, unnoticed by him, yet destined to echo back louder than he could ever imagine. Clara's life outside the mansion was a world Leonard would never imagine. When the grand iron gates closed behind her each evening, she didn't return to luxury or ease, she returned to a small, cramped apartment at the edge of town. The walls were thin, the air smelled faintly of damp plaster, and the single lamp in her kitchen flickered with every passing storm. After 12 hours of scrubbing marble, polishing silver, and enduring Leonard's mocking laughter, most people would collapse into bed. But not Clara. She would place her worn shoes neatly by the door, eat a simple meal of rice and vegetables, and then sit at a second-hand wooden desk that bore the scars of years of use. On that desk sat her most valuable possessions, a battered old laptop, stacks of notebooks filled with scribbled calculations, and a vision board she had created out of magazine cuttings. Pinned to it was an image of a house, not grand like Leonard's, but sturdy, warm, and hers. Each night, she logged into online classes, listening carefully as instructors explained the mysteries of finance, investing, and entrepreneurship. Her eyes often burned with exhaustion, but she forced herself to stay awake. "Just one more lesson," she would whisper to herself, "just one more step closer." Clara saved every penny she could. She skipped luxuries most people considered basic, new clothes, takeout meals, even heating in winter. Instead, she funneled her modest earnings into a small savings account. Slowly, drop by drop, her sacrifices began to form a river of possibility. When her coworkers noticed, they laughed. "Clara, why break your back for dreams that will never come true? You think a maid can ever become rich?" Clara only smiled, never arguing. "Dreams aren't measured by where you start," she would reply softly, "but by how far you're willing to go." At dawn, when most of the city still slept, Clara was already awake again, reviewing her notes, preparing for another day. She walked back to Leonard's mansion with sore feet but a straight spine. To Leonard, she was invisible, a servant meant to fetch, clean, and obey. But behind her silence burned a fire he never noticed, a strength he mistook for weakness. Every insult he hurled at her, every laugh at her expense, became fuel. For Clara, humiliation wasn't a wound, it was a reminder. A reminder of why she could never give up. Because while Leonard wasted his inheritance on fleeting pleasures, Clara was quietly building something far stronger than wealth. She was building herself. The mansion that once shone with opulence began to tell a different story. At first, the changes were subtle: one less gardener, fewer fresh flowers in the hall, and the fountain in the garden left to sputter without repair. But soon, the signs of decay were undeniable. The once immaculate walls lost their shine, the carpets dulled with age, and silence replaced the constant buzz of parties. Leonard didn't notice at first. He was too busy chasing thrills, gambling in Monaco, buying luxury cars he barely drove, and throwing champagne-soaked parties that lasted until sunrise. Each morning, he awoke with a hangover, shrugging off the bills that piled higher and higher on his desk. Relax, he told himself. Money never runs out. I was born rich, I'll die rich. But money, unlike inheritance, doesn't last forever. The family businesses he had inherited, his grandfather's pride, crumbled under his reckless management. Investments went sour. Partners withdrew. Banks called in loans. The first blow came with the repossession of his sports cars. Leonard laughed it off, throwing a smaller, quieter party to drown his irritation. But then came the creditors, the lawsuits, the phone calls he stopped answering. Servants began leaving one by one, unpaid and tired of broken promises. The grand mansion, once alive with light, grew eerily quiet. Chandeliers collected dust, the garden was overrun with weeds, and the silence of emptiness echoed louder than any laughter ever had. One evening, Leonard sat alone in the drawing room with nothing but a half-empty bottle of whiskey. His lawyer entered, carrying a thick folder and an expression of resignation. "It's over, Leonard," the lawyer said. Leonard straightened, his voice sharp with denial. "Over? What do you mean over? This house, this estate, it's mine. It's been in my family for generations." The lawyer sighed. "Generations can't pay debts. The mansion is going up for auction. Your accounts are drained. You have nothing left." Leonard's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He stared at the lawyer as though he had spoken a foreign language. "That's impossible," he whispered hoarsely. "I'm a Milton. The Miltons have always been rich." But the lawyer's silence was louder than any argument. For the first time in his pampered life, Leonard felt something he had never known before: fear. It gnawed at him, cold and relentless. He wandered through the empty halls that night, past paintings of ancestors who had built their legacy with sweat and sacrifice. Their painted eyes seemed to follow him, almost accusingly. By morning, Leonard had to face the truth he had long ignored. The mansion, the symbol of his pride, his status, his power, was no longer his. It was nothing but a house on paper, waiting for the highest bidder. And Leonard, once a spoiled millionaire, was nothing more than a man with debts and regrets. The day of the auction dawned gray and heavy, as though the sky itself mourned the fall of the once proud Milton estate. The grand mansion, stripped of its former glory, stood waiting like a forgotten relic. Its marble steps were cracked, weeds pushed between the cobblestones, and the fountain in the garden had long since dried to silence. Leonard stood at the gates with dark circles under his eyes, clutching a cheap flask to steady his nerves. He had traded his tailored suits for a wrinkled jacket that barely fit. The crowd gathering outside were investors, developers, and wealthy strangers, faces Leonard had once mocked as beneath him, now the very people who would decide the fate of his home. He muttered under his breath, "Maybe one of them will let me stay. Maybe someone will understand this house belongs to me." The auctioneer cleared his throat and began, his voice sharp and final. "The Milton Mansion, heritage property, 23 rooms, 6 acres of land. Opening bid, $1 million. Hands shot up immediately. The numbers climbed. 1.2, 1.5, 2 million. Leonard's heart raced with every figure, his palms slick with sweat. He searched the crowd desperately, trying to guess who would take his home from him. Then, as the bidding slowed, a calm voice rose from the back. 3 million. Heads turned. A woman stepped forward, her presence quiet yet commanding. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her posture straight, her expression steady. No one recognized her at first. But Leonard did. His blood ran cold. Clara. His voice cracked with disbelief. The maid he had mocked, the woman he had laughed at, stood in front of the crowd signing the bidder's slip with a confident hand. She did not tremble, did not hesitate. The auctioneer, stunned but professional, raised his gavel. Going once, going twice. The hammer fell. Sold. To Miss Clara Jameson. The crowd erupted in murmurs of surprise. How could a maid outbid millionaires? Whispers swirled, rumors of secret investments, a successful business, discipline few had imagined. Leonard stumbled forward, pale and shaking. No, no, this can't be real. How could you afford this? Clara turned to him, her expression calm, her voice carrying the weight of years of quiet endurance. Do you remember what you said to me, Leonard? That dreams were absurd, that I would never rise above scrubbing floors. Her eyes held his, unflinching. You were wrong. I worked for this. I sacrificed. While you mocked, I built. And today, this house is mine, not because I was born into wealth but because I earned it. Leonard opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His pride, once as grand as the mansion itself, crumbled before her. The gates that had once closed behind Clara as a servant now opened for her as the rightful owner. She walked past Leonard without a trace of arrogance, only quiet strength. And for the first time in his life, Leonard realized that true power didn't come from inheritance, it came from perseverance. Leonard stood frozen at the gates as Clara walked past him, her new house keys glinting in the sunlight. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. The mansion that had defined his entire existence, his pride, his identity, was no longer his. He stumbled after her, desperation in his voice. Clara, wait, please, you can't just walk in as if this is your home. This place, it's mine. I grew up here, my family built this. You don't understand what it means to me. Clara paused on the marble steps, her hand resting on the door handle she had once polished for him. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were calm, but there was steel in her voice. I understand perfectly, Leonard. I scrubbed these floors until my hands bled. I dusted your family portraits while you laughed at me. You told me I would never be more than a servant. Her words cut deeper than any blade. Leonard swallowed hard, his pride collapsing like a fragile house of cards. I was wrong, he muttered, his voice breaking. Clara, please, I have nowhere to go. Don't throw me out. Let me stay here, just for a while. I don't have anyone else. The man who had once mocked her was now begging at her doorstep, his arrogance stripped away. For a brief moment, Clara saw not the spoiled millionaire who had humiliated her, but a broken man, lonely, desperate, and hollow. She took a slow breath. Do you remember, Leonard, how it felt to laugh at someone else's dreams? How it felt to treat others as less than human? Leonard lowered his head, shame burning through him. Yes, he whispered. And I regret it. More than anything. Clara studied him carefully. She could have turned him away. She could have repaid his cruelty with cruelty of her own. But revenge was never her dream, strength was. I'll let you stay, she said finally, her tone firm but not unkind. But not as the master of this house. If you remain here, you'll live as a caretaker. You'll clean, repair, and tend to the mansion, just as I once did for you. Leonard's eyes widened. For a moment, pride fought within him, screaming at him to refuse. But reality crushed that pride. He had no money, no friends, no place to go. Slowly, painfully, he nodded. Yes, I'll do it, he whispered, his voice thick with defeat. Clara stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The same halls that had once echoed with his mocking laughter now felt heavy with silence. For Leonard, each step across the marble floors was a reminder that his world had turned upside down. And for Clara, it was a moment of quiet justice. Not gloating, not vengeance, but balance. The man who once believed himself untouchable now served in the house he had lost. And the woman he had scorned walked its halls as the rightful owner. Weeks turned into months, and the mansion began to breathe again, not with the chaos of reckless parties but with quiet order and dignity. Under Clara's ownership, the broken fountain flowed once more, the gardens bloomed, and the grand halls regained their light. But this time, the beauty wasn't for display or arrogance, it was a symbol of resilience, of hard-earned triumph. Leonard remained in the house, but not as its master. Each morning, he rose before dawn to sweep the marble floors he had once ordered others to clean. He patched walls, mended roofs, trimmed hedges, tasks he had never imagined touching in his former life. His manicured hands grew calloused, his back, once accustomed to lounging, now ached with honest labor. At first, he resented it. Every brush of the broom felt like humiliation, every drop of sweat a reminder of how far he had fallen. But as time passed, something began to shift. For the first time, Leonard saw the world through Clara's eyes, how much strength it took to serve with dignity, how much determination it took to build something from nothing. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the mansion in gold, Leonard paused in the garden with dirt on his hands. Clara approached, her expression calm as always, a faint smile softening her face. "You've done good work," she said simply, glancing at the neatly trimmed hedges. Leonard looked down at his roughened palms, then back at her. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "I never understood, Clara. Not until now. I thought wealth was about owning things, showing power. But it's not. It's about earning, about respect, about responsibility." Clara studied him for a moment, then nodded. "True wealth isn't measured by what you inherit, Leonard. It's measured by what you create, and by who you become in the process." Her words settled over him like a balm and a burden at once. He lowered his head, not out of shame this time, but out of genuine humility. For the first time, Leonard wasn't the spoiled heir, the arrogant millionaire, or even the fallen man. He was simply human, learning, growing, changing. Clara didn't gloat, nor did she seek to break him further. She had no need. Her victory wasn't in his downfall, it was in her rise, in proving to herself that dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed, could be built with faith, grit, and patience. As night fell, Clara stood at the balcony of her mansion, the cool breeze brushing against her face. She gazed over the gardens and whispered to herself, "This house no longer owns me. I own it. And I own my life." And somewhere deep inside, Leonard finally understood the cruel, beautiful irony of fate. The maid he had mocked had not only surpassed him, but had shown him a better way to live. From servant to owner, from arrogance to humility, the mansion stood as a silent witness to the greatest lesson of all, that dreams belong to those who refuse to stop believing in them.